Hello, good evening and welcome. Who would have thought that when our forebears were fighting and championing and declaring independence, promising us that as black people we can stand on our own, this is what they thought about. Now, a litany of corruption allegations over the past few weeks and months has been a source of worry to civil society organizations and anti-corruption institutions in Ghana. Millions of Ghana cedis which otherwise would have been used to provide infrastructure projects to several communities is lost to corruption. The Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice in April 2013 adopted the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan, and it is a comprehensive multi-sectoral anti-corruption action plan to make the fight an integral part and the regular annual activity of public institutions. And the question is Ghana doing enough to combat the menace? To help me find these answers or these questions, I have in the studio Daniel Batidam, Executive Director of Action African Parliamentary Network Against Corruption, and Collins Agyemang-Sarpong, Procurement Specialist. And I will introduce them properly again when I come back from the break. Or joining us on the phone later will be Justice Emil Short, former Shrike Commissioner on Public Officials' Roles, Checking and Controlling Corruption. This is PM Express. My name is Nana Sakwa. When we come back, we are discussing, are we winning the war on corruption? Hello and welcome back to the show, and today we are discussing, or the big question is, are we winning the war on corruption? Because it's just become rife. It's just become like a breakfast that we serve every morning. You turn up your radio, you pick up a newspaper, and there's a story in there about somebody who took money that belonged to the state. Now, we're going to look at that, and then the other thing that keeps coming up is procurement, sole sourcing. Nobody knows, how did he qualify? Why did he get the contract? We get that all the time. So with me in the studio to explain to us what the whole idea or saga of procurement is about, with my extreme left is Collins Agyemang-Sarpong, who's a procurement specialist. I have a lot of questions, on procurement. And then in my immediate left is the birthday boy, Daniel Batidam, Executive Director. Happy birthday.
Thanks.
Yeah. And he's Executive Director for African Parliamentary Network Against Corruption. So today we're looking at corruption, and we're looking about the whole saga around procurement. And then we'll look further to see what can we throw down on the table for us to learn something from, to maybe reduce it, since we can never eliminate it, but at least reduce it to a sensible minimum. But I'll start with my extreme left. Collins, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And happy birthday, my brother.
Thank you, Nana, and thanks for the cake this morning. I think you guys have hijacked my birthday and decided.
Morning and evening. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it's worth spending it with you.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. On your birthday, we catch you on the morning show, and then on the late night TV show, you catch you again. I want to say thank you to Mrs. Matidam for allowing you to, on a precious day like this, instead of you spending with the family, here you are serving your nation again.
I hope she has allowed me.
College, procurement. It's as simple as it may sound. Go and procure something, mainly just go and buy something.
Yeah.
And yet still somehow many organizations never get it right. I mean, one thing we find is, especially the sole commissioner on these cars that were supposed to be supplied. And this one said yes, that one said no, that one said yes, that one said no. Is there a law on procurement, and what do you do? Let's say if I worked for Ministry of Agric, and I wanted to go and buy pickups or Cadillacs, are there a set rules that, as a public official, I have to go through?
Yes. There is a Public Procurement Act, that's Act 663. It was passed in 2003, and it became effective. That's when the board or the Public Procurement Authority was put together, I think, in 2005. So there was an office. to oversee the application and the implementation of the law. The objective of the law basically was to ensure that procurement are done harmoniously within the public sector. What it means is that if I'm working in Ministry of Finance, the way the procurement officer does his procurement shouldn't be different from the procurement officer also sitting in Ministry of Health or Agric, because we are all under the government. And they did that to make sure that there is a judicious use or economic and efficient use of state resources through transparent and fair, and the law states non-discriminatory manner. So it means that once you have a company and you are dealing in any sort of goods or any service and there's a tender out there, nobody should disqualify you because of maybe the color of your face or the party you join, or you should be part of the process. So that is the object of the law. Again, the law gives the various methods for which anytime that you want to buy, you should use. And you go deeper, it got thresholds, it got approval levels, and the various methods. And I always tell my people or people that I meet that if you read the law, the default method is competitive tendering.
That's the default.
That's the default, because apart from the only method that you will use where you don't need any approval from Public Procurement Authority before you start is the tendering, the competitive tendering. The rest, you have to go through some form of approval before you even start the procurement process. If there's time, I can take you through the various methods before we come to the popular one now, that the sole source or the single source procurement.
I want to look at the tendering. And by the time we go through the tender, let's say we're buying air conditioners.
Okay.
We start, and it's maybe 1,500 cedis a piece. By the time we finish, and with inflation and dollar going up and down, the equipment is 2,500.
Okay.
The tendering aspect, I mean, can't you just Google and find the cheapest possible, economic-wise, say, oh, this guy is supplying, maybe you want to buy a Whirlpool because we've heard of the brand. You go to Google and it will give you a list of people selling the thing and at what price.
Okay, I mentioned that non-discriminatory manner. The law frowns on buying using brands because, like you mentioned, a particular brand. As a procurement person, I don't even need to even mention a brand, because as soon as I use brand to buy, I'm straight away doing sole sourcing, because you will get Whirlpool from Whirlpool manufacturer or the dealer in the country. It means that all other dealers in other brands are not going to be invited.
Oh, but let me come again. I mean, within every with every product, you have about maybe 6 or 10 that are the high class ones, and then you have which are the medium class, and then some that will be at the bottom. So let's say, and I mentioned brand A, brand B, brand C, brand D. They are all within the top range. So any of these brands would be good.
Okay, Nana, once you say that, it becomes subjective. Now you are leaving the decision to take a particular brand to a person who thinks that this is within a group. That is why the law calls for competition. So from the technical side, if you're going to buy air conditioners, first of all, you need to know what type of air conditioner you need. Therefore, you need engineers to help you with the specification. Because if you come to this hall, you wouldn't know which horsepower can power this place.
So the engineer comes and says, for this hole, we need 2.5. So
2.5 horsepower.
So we are set on 2.5.
Okay.
Yes.
2.5 horsepower with the so and so cabling,
maybe
cabling type,
and splits,
or window unit, or the central one. The central one, how many is it cassettes you need, and all. Even the number of people that these air conditioners are going to serve need to be specified so that you get the need and the specification right.
So that's right. Now, there are about 10 different manufacturers who supply that specification within, let's say, an A class. Because with every product, you have standards.
Good.
And then you have another 10 which are sort of the same product, but middle bracket. And then you have another 10 who are, as they say, with China. You know, this is So, as a procurement officer, can't I say that I want air conditioners from the A brand, and therefore, if brand A, brand B, brand C, brand C all fall within that category, find me the best value for money one.
The law doesn't give that chance to just decide. So with your specification, all the 30 ones that 10 up, mid 10, lower 10, they are all given the opportunity to apply and to take part of the tender once their registration, their regulatory documentation and everything is right. It is at the evaluation point that, because among the top 10, you may see that there will be other company or manufacturer who per hour temperature within Ghana, their machine will not stand the test of time. So at the evaluation, it will come out. The evaluation will come out. Again, we don't only use the specification. We look at price, we look at delivery time, we look at after-sales support.
Which is very important.
Because you may have a dealer here in Ghana dealing in one of the top class brands that we all know, but they don't even have technical people to do replacement, to do maintenance and all. So you don't just buy because of the price and the brand. You need to think of after-sales support, replacement, and how fast are we going to deliver the time and everything. So it's a holistic evaluation system that is put in place. Then you can say that based on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we are recommending this particular vendor. Again, there will be some vendor who is not even compliant when it comes to tax payment. There will be a vendor who is not compliant when it comes to SNET contribution. And you are going to use the government's money. So why then do you give to a company, which is not compliant when it comes to the regulatory issues? You know, so it is a holistic process that you need to go through to say that this is the company that we're going to go. And it is very transparent within the public sector. It is not only the procurement officer or the engineer that is going to sit in the evaluation room to evaluate and come out to say, oh, this is brand A, we are going. It's a committee. You have an evaluation panel, which is you recommend, then it is set. Everybody is written to that you've been nominated to sit on this evaluation. And everybody who's supposed to bring his or her expertise to bear during the evaluation. At times you even need a lawyer to sit there because of the kind of contract that you are going to enter into. You need the accountant because there are times that you need to assess the liquidity of the company because the default payment terms too for our law is 100% payment after delivery. So if a company A comes and says that yes, I can deliver this contract, then you need to assess whether they have financial capability to get 2 billion or 2 million or whatever you call it to supply you before you pay. If not, the guy will just win the contract before they will start going for loans. Where we sit, at times you see your supplier, oh, can you sign this form for me so that I can give it to my bankers so that I'll get money to supply you? And it will be delaying. So we go into it, they will bring their financial statement, then the accountant will help you assess to say that they are liquid.
Let me bring Daniel in here. Daniel, I mean, are we bucking ourselves down with too many technicalities and leaving common sense out? I mean, if I was going to buy a rocket, you know, to go to Mars. I can understand. I need all these technicalities. But today, if I was buying, you know, paper clips or televisions or something that is not too technical, if I go through this, would it come back and bite us?
Well, I think one of the issues that Mr. Sapong has raised has to do with the process, which, as you rightly said, can be long and even unwieldy to some extent. But unfortunately, when we deal with issues like procurement, which unfortunately accounts for about 70% of all public sector corruption, then you can't run away from these processes. They may look long and unwieldy, and I think that with time we realized that perhaps we still need to do some stock taking to find out how costly it is, the kind of methods we are using. I have been wondering whether the public procurement law as we have it now is not serving certain interest groups, including even the media, in terms of some of the regulations, in terms of publicizing. I ask sometimes that how much is it costing us to follow the process, and how do we compare that with what we get in terms of value for money? Because the whole thing about wanting to get procurement right is it has to do with value for money. So for me, there are issues about what it is costing us to implement, and I think that is the concern you are raising. But beyond that, I think we need to bear in mind that whether we like it or not, there are ways in which procurement has worked with less bureaucracy and with less red tapeism and so on. And I think what we are realizing from the experience since 2003, I believe, when the Public Procurement Act, what we are realizing is that it takes time also to get various stakeholders, because the procurement process involves a lot of stakeholders, a lot of actors, a multiplicity of actors. And at each stage of it, like he was saying, people ask that, oh, can you just sign this for me? It looks very simple, but the question is that what is the rules require one to do? Yeah. If the rules require that you go through a certain process to get that thing done, sometimes people become impatient and they want to, go for shortcuts. And when they want to go for shortcuts, they eventually find ways of lubricating the system so that things will go as fast as they want.
I think the issue is because, let's say he's going to buy medicine.
Yeah.
And the process started in January.
Yeah.
And he's giving you his bid that, well, it's going to cost me $300 or 300 cedis to bring you the medicine. And come June, the technical man is coming here and going there. And by the time his guys in India or wherever is going to bring it, look, now the thing is 400.
Yeah.
And the tendering process is...
Can I come in?
Yeah, briefly, yeah.
Like he said, let me tell you one thing. Procurement is the only avenue where easily money gets out of every organization. It is through procurement, because you bring in third parties. Yeah. That is why you have to have procedures as to how the money gets out. Hardly can you go to the accountant's office, open a drawer and take money out of it, but with procurement the money gets out. But I always want to tell people that you just need to work smart. There are various methods in the law. We have request for quotation, and the law will give you at what threshold you are buying an item costing 2,000. You don't need to go through this lengthy tendering that I'm talking of. Again, there are some items that you already know the suppliers within the country. I have bought cars. First, I did national competitive tendering. The second year, I did national competitive tendering. The third time, I did restricted tendering, because anytime I advertise, you get the same crop of companies coming, 4 of them, because of, if you talk of SUV, the pickups, and you can count the number of companies there. All that Public Procurement Authority wants you to know is justify why this time around you're not going to advertise in any of the newspapers. You said, okay, this is Ghana. These are the top, like you Google, it will give you all the car companies. So that one, you change. You have a justification to change
move the process
to move the process fast. But again, people may delay the process so that at the neck of the time, they route it faster. Because there's another procurement plan. I can tell you, 80% of the time, people just use the procurement plan that have been provided, okay, by the law and by PPA. They just use only 10% of what they write. It's become academic exercise. When the procurement officers are even asking the departmental heads, what are your program for the year? Because in private sector, that's what we do. You need to be able to know what you want to do within this space of time. They will not. So by the time that they need the thing, that is the time that they are asking for. If we have a plan, let's say by January, the procurement guy will know that in June, we may need a car. The guy can get his specification in February. So by June, by May, by April, order had been placed. Delivery, 60 days is done. But people don't go according to the plan because we always want to...
2 weeks to time.
We want to create that agency that gives room for the sole sourcing.
Yeah.
But the sole sourcing, we have what you need to qualify to apply it. But everybody want to use that emergency. Yeah. It is urgent. We cannot wait. But if you plan, I don't see why. Somebody was telling me that when you go to the deeper villages, the essential drugs are not there. But the same village, you see Coca-Cola and cigarettes. How are these manufacturers, how are these multinationals doing their logistics? Essential drugs will be in central medical stores, and it will not be in a town, just even in Eastern region. I don't want to mention any name. So if the private sector and the multinationals are doing it, why can't they? Again, we are advocating for what we call framework agreement. You can have an agreement for 2 years, and you call off, like air conditioners.
You don't need through.
So you do a very lengthy process for, let's say, 6 months. You close the deal, you sign a contract. You know the call-off because you know that it's going to take 2 years. When it comes to the price negotiation and all, you take inflation and everything into consideration. So in the long run, it becomes faster, it becomes cheaper, and you don't need to go. So it's just working smart. People work hard, but they don't work smart.
Let me get you again. But somehow, you find that government institutions will pay more for the same equipment that a private institution pays less for. Somehow, you know, if it's, be it air conditioners or pens or, I mean, cars maybe not, but with smaller items, you know, printers and computers, you find that the government institutions would pay more than the private institution will pay for.
Yeah, but I guess this is something we have. I'm not saying it's a justification, but this is part of what we have inherited from our colonial legacy. Government is that establishment which doesn't belong to anybody. So when something is for government, you know, you can buy it at any price because a bansika, as they say. But when it is for yourself, you will think twice and try to get the best for it. I guess this is a kind of spillover from our colonial mentality that government doesn't belong to us. And in fact, I think in times past, people used to feel that it was an achievement even to steal from government because then you were able to beat the colonial master. But on a more serious note, I think what my friend here is saying, Collins is saying, is actually bordering on the manner in which we decide to operate so that we can get the kind of shortcuts and deals that we want. For instance, the idea of planning. Procurement also has to be planned over time. Yeah. So if you know ahead that in 6 months' time you are going to have to procure certain things, there is a rollout process which allows you to do it in a manner that you can be efficient, effective, and get value for money. If you decide to roam around, and of course that is the bureaucracy we talk about, they say, oh, they are still waiting for this man to approve, it's still in the pipeline. Mm-hmm. And then when you get to a very tight stage, in fact, emergencies are always one grounds for corruption to take place. Because when you push yourself into an emergency situation, then you can bypass the rules. And it can be deliberate, especially when you realize that over time, people are doing the same thing. You ask yourself, what is the point that we have planned? There is a budget that has been set for various things ahead of time, and yet people wait until they are running out of time. And then they will have to say, see, under the circumstances, we need to do this. We need to cut corners. So I think that is one of the issues we need to look at, which does not have anything to do with the law, whether the law is good or not. But again, as he said, over time, we have also had some experiences. For instance, if you know that the kind of things you procure for your organization are going to be gotten from just a certain limited number of, then you go straight there and get it.
Let me take a break here, and then when I come back, Justice Emil Short will join us on the phone, and then we'll look at the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan, which is sitting in Parliament and somehow gathering dust. And then all over us is corruption. And there's just a plan there that has to be gone through the system so we all follow and then it minimizes. And they said it's a holistic view of how to look at corruption in our country. We're coming straight back. Are we winning the war on corruption? And you know something, the only channel where money disappears somehow legally, even though it's going illegal, is through procurement. Because as for that, it's leaving, it's going to go and buy something and come back. As for whether it's going to buy at the right price, the proper place, that's a whole different sector on its own. But I think I need to get Collins in the studio again, and then we sit down and do an hour of procurement. And at every stage, he says, there is a loophole, and if you're not careful, you end up losing a lot of money. But there's a National Anti-Corruption Plan, which is sitting in Parliament. Now, I hear lots of stakeholders came together to put this thing together and gave it to us and make this a law, so we make it work. I know Daniel worked on it, and Justice Emil Short also worked on it. I don't know if I have him on the phone now. Hello, Justice Emil Short? Oh, I don't have him on the. Okay, I don't have him on the phone. But Daniel, you worked on it, so just give us a general view, because I am under the opinion that once you missed kindergarten and you've missed all that, you know, it's like teaching an old dog new tricks. Is there any way of correcting us, or have we adopted the bad habits already?
Well, first of all, let me say that I think it's important to give some background to the National Anti-Corruption Plan. And in 2009, 2010, I think the new government that came into place, then Vice President John Dramani Mahama, now His Excellency the President, commissioned a technical working group, as you said, bringing together all kinds of people from civil society, from the public sector, from Parliament, from, you know, virtually all the stakeholders you can think about in the country, because we had realized that there is no way anybody can tackle corruption without a plan. Because corruption itself involves planning, it involves strategy, it involves all kinds of things. And people, the networks of corruption are very well established. So if you want to tackle it, we know you need to have a plan. Now, what we did as a technical group of people, and I must emphasize that this cut across political divide. In fact, there were representatives from different political parties in Parliament. that participated in this process. What we did was to look at our history as a country and all the efforts that had been made to fight at tackling corruption, and to say, where are we now? What has worked, what has not worked, and what can we do as a way forward to address this problem in a holistic manner. Mind you, we are talking about a country where at some point we even attempted to shoot down corruption by shooting people we perceived to be corrupt. And yet, today, I don't know, 20, 30 years along the line, we are still talking about corruption. That means that even some of the approaches, the most radical approaches we adopted did not seem to solve the problem. I think today we have a plan, a national anti-corruption plan. It's a 10-year plan, and it is a multi-stakeholder effort that produced this plan. And I think that this is the blueprint that Ghana actually needs. And it looks at corruption from different angles, from the prevention aspect, from the legal or legislative aspect. It looks at it from the point of view of the cure in terms of punishment and all those. And also, most importantly, I think, the education aspect. Many of us think that corruption is just about politicians. I think that is an oversimplification of the issue. Politicians, I have been working with parliamentarians.
Let me get Justice Emil Short. I think he's joined us on the phone now. Good evening, Justice Emil Short.
Yeah, good evening.
Thank you very much for joining us, PM Express. And obviously, we are continuing our discussion in the morning and educating citizens in how to behave correctly and the war against corruption. But we are now discussing the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan, which you were involved in. But before you even launch into it, is there anywhere in it that suggested that the IGP should be independent and not a political post?
IGP.
That the
IGP should be independent and not a political post, because that is also another recipe for corruption. You know, if he's independent, he will arrest more people than if he's nominated by the president.
I don't remember whether there was any provision to that effect.
Okay, so then okay, let's talk about the action plan. What was in it that you think that this could help our situation?
Sorry, what was your question again?
The National Anti-Corruption Action Plan.
Yes.
Which is lying in Parliament collecting dust. And I'm saying, what's in this document that could have a silver bullet or the magic wand to help us?
Yes. First of all, you see, this plan was developed by all stakeholders. And by that I mean, you know, representatives from government, parliament, civil society, the private sector, the anti-corruption agencies, even the media, even the developing partners. They were all involved. They formed a working group to look at, you know, developing a national action plan. And also, regional workshops were conducted, you know, to get the views of people all over the country. And there was consultation with government, department, ministry agencies, and so on. So it was a very comprehensive consultation process, and which took about 2 years to develop.
Okay.
And it has benefited from, you know, experience of experts and also international experience as to how to develop corruption. What distinguishes this plan from other previous initiatives is the fact that it adopts a holistic and comprehensive approach, you know, to fighting the problem of corruption. Mm-hmm. Previous initiatives have been sort of piecemeal, useful as they may be. They have been piecemeal and they do not address the, you know, intrinsic causes of corruption. Now, this plan is based on 3 planks. One, you know, massive education, public education and awareness about the evils of corruption, what corruption costs us as a nation, what we are losing as a nation. And that is something that people are not very aware of, the massive leakage that occurs and how it denies our people economic and social rights, and how it undermines the rule of law, and so on. There are so many there are so many consequences of corruption. So in this plan, there is a series of educational programs which will galvanize public support for the implementation of the plan.
Okay.
And from schools, forming integrity clubs in schools, having, at the district, municipal, and regional levels, integrity activities, and so many others. That is an essential part of the plan. Also, there is the issue of prevention. Prevention methods have been adopted, looking at institutions, public institutions, examining them, how the systems work, the procedures and practices, loopholes and which facilitate corruption, and finding ways of plugging these loopholes, computerization of certain taxes, certain systems like revenue collection and so on, reducing person-to-person contact, a lot of issues that really make such institutions prone to corruption. That is one aspect of it, the prevention dimension. The other dimension which the plan looks at is the effective investigation and prosecution of corruption. And there are a number of initiatives like, enhancing the capacity of the Attorney General's office in order to expeditiously deal with corruption, establishment of anti-corruption courts, to deal specifically and expeditiously with corruption cases, enhancing, the capacity of the anti-corruption agencies like SHRAJ, EOCO, and the financial intelligence, agencies.
Justice, if I may come in here, I mean, it all sounds brilliant. So why would a nation that is suffering so much not pass this through Parliament expeditiously?
Well, that's a question that you should put to the parliamentarians and the executive, because this document was handed over to the president when he was vice president in 2011, and he in turn handed it over to Parliament. Parliament was supposed to discuss it, and then the document will be adopted as a national policy document for implementation. So, but it has been lying in Parliament for 2 years now, and I'm not aware that it has been, put on the floor for discussion. So I don't want to speculate as to why this is so. But just to add further, you see that this document has all these activities. They are implementing agencies that are to carry out these activities. There's a budget line that has been fixed for each activity. There are short, medium, and long-term activities. And also, it's important to point out that there is going to be a monitoring and evaluation committee comprising of representatives from SHRAJ and the National Development Planning Commission to monitor, periodically the implementation of this action plan. So it is not something that it has been well conceived and well thought of. And if it is implemented, and we have the necessary resources to implement it, and I'm sure the development partners would be willing to invest in the implementation of this action plan, I think it will make quite a difference in the incidence of corruption.
Well, see, this one single act actually goes to seal the fact that as a people, as a nation, as a state, we are not willing to fight this canker. Well,
all of us must, do whatever we can to ensure that we fight this canker of corruption. And it's a fight which has to be done collectively. Everybody has a role to play in it. the executive, parliament, judiciary, civil society, you and I.
Yeah, just if you hold on one
public,
second.
The public, also have a role to play.
Let me bring Daniel in here. Daniel, I mean, this must be very frustrating. Here you are on your birthday. In the morning, you are on air trying to fight for your country. In the evening, you're on air trying, and there's a bill lying in Parliament, and they're saying, well, we really have time to look at it. It must be frustrating.
Let me just say, before Daniel answers, it's not a bill. It's not going to be passed as a bill.
It's not going to be passed as a bill. I beg your pardon.
No, it's
Thanks
a
for the
document
correction.
which will be adopted as a national policy document.
Thanks for the correction.
It will be implemented because it has gone through a consultative process where all stakeholders have been involved, including the government and even the office of the president.
I'll bring you in here then.
Yeah, thanks. And I think Honorable Emil Short made that point was very important because it's not just the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan is not just like any act. I have said that we have passed a lot of laws in this country, and if passing laws were enough to fight corruption, we should have made a headway by now. I think there is more to it than this. And the importance of making the distinction between the NACAP as a bill as against a national policy document is to emphasize the fact that this should transcend political party regimes. That means that it is something that whether it is the MPP or the NDC that comes, it's a 10-year plan, and it doesn't matter who is there, you have to implement it. And that is why I think the multiplicity of stakeholders that were involved was important. But let me make a point just to not to let us throw our hands up and say like nothing is happening. I think that the mere fact that a government or the government of the day decides to invest in a plan like this is a signal of an intention to do something. What we have often failed to do is to go beyond the intention. And I think that is where our concerns are. That, look, when the government of the day asked us to come together from all walks of life and work on this document, which took nearly 2 years, we all said, okay, now we are beginning to see a sign that government is willing to do something. Because you can't fight corruption without a plan. It's well established. You need a strategy and a plan, and it involves resources. So again, this is where we cannot run away from the politics. Just as we are investing resources in other sectors, if we want to fight corruption, we must invest in it.
That is the fear, not that. We've always got like intention. There's almost everything that has been reported has been investigated and looked into and everything. Well, thank you very much. Now we know who stole the money. Good. Now we know who made the mistake. Good. Now we know, and then we just move on to the next one. Is this going to be one of those cases?
No, it cannot. It cannot. And that is why, as we have repeatedly said, so far our approach to fighting corruption has been more curative than preventive. This plan gives us an opportunity to prevent the recurrence of the kind of things that, yes, it is good to deal with the corruption of the past, but if you have a plan such as we have now waiting in Parliament to be adopted, then you look at measures that you need to put in place to prevent the recurrence. Otherwise, what we'll keep on doing is that every now and then governments come and then they keep on talking about the corruption of the past. Let me bring Justice
Emil Short in here. Just 30 seconds. Justice, what can we do in the media, civil society, to sort of let the authorities know that, look, just take time and have a look through this thing and pass it, because it would help us all?
Well, this program, for example, is useful. Yeah. I think there are many people who watch this program and Joy News program that we did this morning. People in the authority do watch and listen. And I'm sure that they are taking note. And let's be optimistic and hope that in the not too distant future, this plan will come alive. It will be put on the floor of Parliament, it will be debated, and concrete steps will be taken to implement it. Mind you, it requires the allocation of resources to the various implementing agencies, as well as the collaborating agencies. And you see, one of the advantages of this plan is that it is integrated into the operation of ministries, departments, and agencies. And, you know, it's going to form part of the daily working life of these agencies at all levels. And so I think it's a very useful plan.
And very laudable.
As we continue to discuss it, I believe that government would take notice, and let's be optimistic and hope that very soon, you know, the plan will see the light of day.
Thank you very much for joining us and sharing that with us. Collins.
Thank you.
Corruption. I mean, you are in procurement, so you're quite close to it, you know, and trying to prevent it every day. But are we being overwhelmed?
I think it's the people. It's not only the procurement guys. Everybody wants to enrich themselves, you know. But I always say that no matter how difficult the procurement process is, it can still be done right. If the people doing it or implementing it want to do it right, because there are so many ways of going about it. And procurement people, we do have this ethics and other things, because corruption, you should be a person that I should stay away from it. It's difficult to let people say that they will not do, they will not corrupt
when they can get away with it.
When they can get away with it. But I think that the point that we have reached as a country, there's the need for us to have some love for our country, because things are getting out of hand.
10 seconds, Daniel, 10 seconds. That love, and I keep saying, if you don't teach it from kindergarten class 1 coming, and then you get the guy when he's a graduate, can you teach him to go back and love Ghana?
Well, I think it's important for us to take into account the kind of things that motivate people to corruption. With the kind of corruption I think we are seeing today is also one that has to do with survival. There are people of integrity, people who mean well, who end up indulging in corruption because they need to survive. That is why this morning I was saying that it is important for us to analyze. If we want to solve the problem, we have to analyze it.
Which part of
where is the corruption coming from? If we don't look at the source of the corruption. And part of it, you know, also has to do with, you know, what are the people who are telling us to do the right thing, doing themselves? And I want us to end this thing by sending the right information to the right people. That
10 seconds.
Leadership, by example, is the beginning and the end of the fight against corruption. I don't want people telling me what directives they are giving. We want to see modern man listens more willingly to witnesses than to preachers.
Thank you very much.
If you want us to do something, show us the way.
Once again, happy birthday, Daniel Batadam, and thank you very much, Collins Ajimai. Justice Emeshot is off the phone now, but you know, we're grateful for his contributions too. My name is Nanan Sako, and as I say, tomorrow we'll be back to do it all over again. But please, as you go to work tomorrow, a little less corrupt than you were today. It goes to all of us. Thank you very much.